And so my net worth was minus $100,000. Going from not knowing and being in the dark to actually knowing where I stood. And despite how scary that number looked, it was still hugely liberating and empowering because I thought, now I know where I stand and I'm going to do something about it.
Hi there, I'm Ryan Munsey, host of the Move the Chains podcast, and I'm so glad you're here with me today for this episode of the show. As an entrepreneur, a best-selling author, and keynote speaker, I help executives, leaders, athletes all across the world take the next steps towards success. If you want to have the freedom of time and finance to do whatever you want, whenever you want, this episode is for you. We're joined today by Rose Hahn, former Wall Street high performer who quit the rat race and went from 100K in debt to being a millionaire in less than 10 years. Rose is the author of At a Zero and runs a hugely successful YouTube channel where she teaches other people how to own your finances and create a life of total freedom. Rose, welcome to the show. I'm so pumped to talk to you about how you build systems. It sounds like it's very similar to the Move the Chains philosophy. So I'm really excited to dive into this with you.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for having me on. And like we were saying just before you press record, this conversation couldn't be more timely because you talk a lot about high performance in sports and other areas of your life. And now that I've wrapped up my book launch of At a Zero, I'm totally focusing on the area of health and fitness. And as I started a weightlifting routine, going to the gym, I'm seeing so many similarities in transforming your finances and transforming your body and health. So yeah, I'm really excited to nerd out about this with you today.
Yeah. So, I mean, just in the brief conversation we've already had, it sounds to me like building systems is something that maybe comes naturally to you. We'll talk specifically about the At a Zero method, but just in general, where do you can you trace back your, whether you want to call it organizational skills or prioritization skills, however you want to think about that. But this idea of building systems, can you pinpoint an origin for that?
That's a good question. I don't think it comes naturally to me. And over time, I created really good systems for my money, which we can get into. But really, that mindset started with the book Atomic Habits. I'm sure you've heard of it, James Clear, where he talked about if you can make success inevitable by creating the right systems. And so I read that maybe in it's been about 5 years ago now. So yeah, that's really where I started crystallizing the mindset. But yeah, that's, okay. I can't say there's like an origin story to that.
Okay. So maybe it was sort of the book. You took that, you applied it to finances, you saw how well it worked. And now, like you said, you're like, okay, I want to focus on health and fitness. I'm going to set up a very similar approach because I've seen how well it worked with finances.
Yeah, totally. So like after my book launch, which was about 4 weeks ago now, I was sort of reassessing all areas of my life because after this huge project that was consuming my life for 2 years, I'm like, okay, now what? And I noticed my finances are actually great. You know, I wasn't as on top of my budget and things as I normally am, but everything was running smoothly. One thing I did not have to worry about during the busiest season of my life was having money to pay for things and being stressed about money. But I have gained a little bit of weight, you know, a little more padding than I like to have. And I noticed that my relationship with my boyfriend had kind of suffered. I mean, we're still good, but we didn't have as much quality time as we normally do. So I'm like, okay, there's these other areas of my life that I need to improve. But thank God that my money, I was investing, my net worth grew in that time. I'd never worried about bills. My expenses went up during the book launch because, you know, a lot of business expenses, but I never had to stress about money. And I realized, yeah, thank God for the systems that I had in place. So I have recurring reminders in my Asana, which is the project management software that I use for like monthly, quarterly, and weekly tasks that need to happen for my finances to be running smoothly. And, you know, sometimes they get pushed off to the next day or even the next week, but they do happen. Like filing for taxes, contributing to my Roth IRA or my retirement accounts before the deadlines, dollar cost averaging into investments, checking my budget and making sure there's enough money for all the things that I have coming up. These were all happening very smoothly. So I thought, why is it that I've been struggling so much with health for years, actually? I mean, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, but I've been quote unquote trying to go to the gym in the morning and have this whole healthy morning routine for years now. And I would kind of do it, but it never really happened. And I thought, let me just think about this systems non-negotiable mindset to fitness so I can freaking take care of this thing too. And I realized, well, just do it like you do with finances. It's not a question of if you're going to invest every month with your extra savings. It's not a question of if you're going to look at your budget to see where your money went. You're just going to do it. You just do it. You've been doing that for the last X amount of years. And that's why you are where you are financially. That's why that's an area of your life you never have to worry about and gives you so much freedom and options. So I realized, okay, I need to start implementing a system with my fitness. And so I'm really proud to say I can even show you the notes in my iPhone app, but I created this weightlifting regimen. And every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I do the same set of moves, number of sets and reps. And I take a note of how many I did so that the following week I can add one more rep or one more set. And I go at 8 a.m. every morning on my e-bike, same route to Gold's Gym in Venice. And I do the same thing and it's worked great. And now I can really like project myself out 3 months out. If I just keep doing this, my body is going to completely change. And I have complete faith in that because I know the power of systems.
Yeah. I love that you use, excuse me, I love that you use Asana. A lot of the companies that I work with use that. So I've got experience with it. But you mentioned yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly. And I love that you do that. I do the same thing for my own goals in all of the areas of life. And I do the same thing with my coaching clients. And we'll call them pillars or buckets. And I think this is what you and I were talking a little bit about this before we hit record, where, you know, it's not just move the chains on your health and fitness. It's not just move the chains on relationships. But if you look at your life as a whole, what are all those pillars or buckets that matter to you? And of course, finance is one of them. And we'll dive deep into that in a minute. The other thing I'll tell you that you're doing really, really well or smart that you're doing it is tracking your workouts and what we would call that like beating your logbook, right? And so many people don't understand the importance of that. If you're not tracking what you're doing in the gym, how do you know whether or not you're actually getting better? And the fact that you this early in your journey there are doing that, you're approaching it that way, and you're trying to beat the logbook, I have no doubt you're going to see the results that you want. So that's really cool that you're doing it that way.
Thanks. Yeah, I got to show you because I'm so proud. I don't know if you can see. Oh, yeah.
Back it up. Oh, there you go.
There you go. Yeah. So
nice.
I check it off. The green check mark is after I've done it. So I get that dopamine hit of like checked off. I did it. And it's been great. And I really do think this habit, this sort of standard of always tracking where I am, because that's huge in finances too. You need to know where you're at before you can get to where you want to go. So you can see what the gap is and what needs to be done. You also need to know how much is coming in and how much is going out. You can't progress unless you know those things. So I think that attitude of being really precise about things has really transferred over well.
So this may be getting ahead a little bit, but you mentioned identifying the gap. I think a lot of people, when we talk about behavior change, the gap can either be intimidating or motivating, depending on how folks see it. And so from a financial standpoint or a financial health standpoint, when you start helping people or when people see they initially see that gap, how do you coach them on seeing that not as a negative, but as an opportunity?
So before I can answer that, I want to go back to my whole story of how I came up with At a Zero. So growing up, I always did what I was supposed to do. I'm like a good Asian kid. I did my piano classes. I studied really hard and got to a great college. because my parents always told me to be successful in America, to make us proud, you have to get a good education, study hard, work hard, and get a good job. And so I did all of that. I went to NYU, graduated top of my class. But at 23, I found myself in $100,000 of debt. And even though I had this 6-figure job on Wall Street that, made everybody proud, I also lived paycheck to paycheck. So I was living this kind of glamorous New York City lifestyle, but spending everything I made on just keeping appearances. And meanwhile, I had this mountain of debt that I was too ashamed to tell anyone about, and was so scary that I didn't even really know exactly how much I owed. So that was the state of my finances. And one day I had this realization. It was sort of this dark winter where I had a breakup and realized I had no friends because I was working all the time, and I had no options to go travel. Like I was due for my mandatory annual 2-week vacation, and I had no money to go on it. And I would have to put it on my credit card to go. And I just realized, wow, like my life is so not what I thought it would be. And I did everything I'm supposed to do. I worked so hard, and why is my life so crappy? And that was the beginning of my sort of financial awakening, where I realized, okay, I need my money needs to change. I need to do something about this because no one's going to do it for me. So I got up the courage to look up all of my student loans. Most of my debt was student loans, as well as a few credit card balances. And I put it all on a piece of paper on the wall with a list of all of the debts and how much each one totaled up to. And so there were assets on one side, liabilities on the other side. Liabilities was all of those debts. There were a little bit over 100,000. Assets, I had a little bit in my checking and a little bit in my 401k, which I accidentally happily accumulated because my employer like automatically opted me into it. And so my net worth was minus $100,000. And even though it was scary to see that number, because like I'm like 25 at this point, $100,000 minus is scary, right? I hadn't even really begun my life yet. But going from not knowing and being in the dark to actually knowing where I stood, and despite how scary that number looked, it was still hugely liberating and empowering, because I thought, now I know where I stand, and I've realized that I have the courage to face it, and I'm going to do something about it. So that's really where my journey began. And at first, my only goal was just to get to zero. To me, to not have $1,000 in monthly payments due every month and having this hugely negative net worth, that would be like financial freedom to me. So in the beginning, I wasn't trying to become a millionaire. Like looking back, like now I'm here, I have financial freedom, over multi-7-figure net worth. But that was never my initial goal setting out. Just like I'm sure a lot of people who, start out overweight, they probably never set out to become a marathon runner, but that happens to some people, right? Because they get to a certain level of fitness and then they want to keep going. So that's what happened to me. I first just focused on getting to minus 10,000 and then zero. And once I finally got to zero, which took about 4 years, by the way, I thought, well, I can just keep going. Next is 100,000. And then from there, it was 1 million, and it's just so on and so forth. So if you just focus on the next phase in front of you, that makes the journey a lot less overwhelming. And I think for a lot of people, regardless of what the number is, just knowing where you stand is going to be a huge breath of fresh air.
Yeah. I love the way that you're applying what we would call move the chains to finances. And so, maybe now would be a good time to just get you to explain add a zero from just the highest level view. And then I'd love to maybe zoom in and see, what did you specifically do to get from, that first 4 years to go from negative 100 to just to get to zero?
So when I started my whole financial awakening journey, the first thing I realized is I have learned a lot of things, but I learned nothing about what to actually do with my money. I even went to finance school, but I don't know anything about what it actually takes to create a life of financial freedom. Yeah. So the first thing I did was go to Barnes & Noble, Union Square. I was in New York City at the time, and I would go straight to the self-help section and read all the books about money and other things too. Any self-development book I could get my hands on. But a lot of the books that I found about personal finance, they were great, but I found it sometimes confusing because they would sort of address like in a phase of your financial journey that I wasn't at. So for example, you've probably heard of Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, number one best-selling personal finance book of all time. And he talks a lot about, leverage and using other people's money and expanding your, what does he say? Expanding your context and instead of the content, just like a lot of big ideas that are life-changing. But at the time, I'm in debt and I'm ashamed of how much debt I have. And I'm embarrassed to tell people about it. And like, it's all very scary and overwhelming. So to talk about leverage and other people's money and all these big financial freedom concepts was just not applicable to me at the time. What I needed to know is, how do I, first of all, just feel better about my finances and just get out of debt, like really simple. So that's something I realized is every step of the financial freedom journey, there are upgrades you have to make in your mindset, and there are financial skills that you need to acquire at each level. And it doesn't help you to think about all the things you have to do later before you've just done the first thing. So a lot of people, when they think about financial freedom, they're like, I need to make more money. Let me start a business and start making, like just a lot more money. But what good is it to make a lot more money if everything you make goes right out the door because you have no control over your spending, or you don't know how to keep some of what you make and invest it and turn that into permanent wealth? Or if you have a really bad money mindset and no matter how much you make, you can't bring yourself to spend or enjoy any of it, or you have this sort of live for today mindset and everything just goes out the door. You see what I'm saying? So you have to master certain things before it makes sense to move on to other things. And that's how I did the whole journey in 7 years. $100,000 of debt to $1 million in 7 years, because I took things one step at a time in the order that you should take them in. So now we can get into the actual journey of what I did.
Okay.
So first, and this is the structure of my book, At a Zero. First, getting to zero involves mastering your mindset. So is it okay if I go off into tangents and then explain the whole process?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, do your thing.
Or would you like me to explain the process and then kind of go back and dive deep into each one?
Let's lay out the process first, and then we can go into each one.
Okay, yeah. So getting to zero requires you to first understand your money mindset and adopt an empowering money mindset, because you're the one who's going to be going on this At a Zero journey. So the better your mindset is, the more effective you'll be at executing and actually doing all the rest of the steps. Then the next is getting control of credit card debt. It sounds really simple, but 87% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and most people are carrying a credit card balance. Like, you will never get ahead paying 25% in interest. We should be looking for ways to earn 25%, not paying 25%. So taking control of credit card debt, and then doing a spending deep dive. So diving into your 3 to 6 months of spending and seeing where your money went, and not trying to make judgments or any huge changes at this point, but just bringing awareness to where your money has gone and how you feel about it. So those are all involved in getting to zero. Then you can get to 10,000, which is where you really start creating a budget and telling your money what to do so that you can play offense with your money. Like, when it comes in, you already know where it's going to go. You give every dollar a job rather than having things kind of accidentally slip through your fingers and then you're wondering where all your money went by the end of the month. And then after you've created a budget, then it's about making easy changes. Like, there are some ways to optimize your expenses that really will feel painless. So one thing I teach a lot about is negotiation. If you just get up the confidence to ask and advocate for yourself, you can cut a lot of expenses. And then later on, when you negotiate for more pay, those same negotiation skills transfer over. And there's some other ways to optimize your expenses. The place where people spend the most money is what I call the big three: housing, transportation, and food. And just by making small habit changes, you can really save a lot. So for example, one thing I always tell people to do is don't buy a new car with a monthly payment. Gently used, like the average American spends around $800 on a new car payment for a depreciating asset.
Mm-hmm.
So let someone else take the depreciation hit and buy a used car that's already depreciated. Like, because as soon as you drive it off the lot, a car has depreciated at least 30%.
Mm-hmm.
So just buying a car that's 1 or 2 years used, you already save a lot in that depreciation. And the monthly payment is going to be more like 300 or 400 rather than 800. So there are things like that you can do to optimize your expenses and get to $10,000 pretty quickly, pretty painlessly. We're not talking like make huge lifestyle changes or deprive yourself of spending on things that make you happy. It's just about being smart and strategic. And then now we can talk about getting to 100,000, which is where you're really creating a financial cushion. And the fastest way to do this is one, you earn more, because the more you earn, the more you can save, because everything up to getting to 10,000 has been focused on the expense side of things, but you can only cut out so much of your life, right? Because we're not talking about living on rice and beans and being miserable. This is about adding a zero in the most joyful, efficient way possible. So once you've just optimized your expenses and created the budget and sort of just cut the fat, now we can focus on the income side of the equation, because there's no limit to what you can earn. There is a limit to what you can save, right? So then it's about negotiating your pay and earning your worth in the career that you have. And then with that gap, hopefully you've earned more. Now your savings or your spending is under control. So you've got this gap of extra stuff to play with. Now you want to stash that money away tax efficiently. There are many accounts that allow you to put money away and basically avoid paying taxes later on. Or put money away and whatever you put in that account this year becomes an immediate tax deduction. You can save much faster by contributing to a 401k or a Roth IRA rather than just a regular checking account or a regular brokerage account. So understanding the tax law and stashing money away tax efficiently, that got me to 100,000 very, very quickly. And then getting to 1 million. This is where we really make that mindset up level and we think about making your money work for you instead of you working for money, and also breaking free of the trading time for money equation. Because if you just work hours for dollars, or work for a paycheck every 2 weeks, sure, you can still get to 1 million. It just might take you longer because the path is linear, right? But if you break the equation of trading time for money and you create income leverage, what I call leverage, then you can have an exponential income growth curve. Mm-hmm. And then from there and that's how I've reached 1 million in just 3 more years after getting to zero. So that's the whole out of zero process. And it's every step of the way is designed so that you just focus on acquiring the money skills and the money attitude that you need at that phase before moving on to the next and the next and the next.
I love that. Thank you for walking us through it. I want to maybe jump into a couple of those and ask you some questions on each phase specifically. Starting at the earn more. I can hear a lot of people out there saying they're not in a position to earn more, or maybe they're afraid to negotiate for more. But if somebody feels like that's something they can't change, what would you tell them?
So that's really where to start, is that attitude of why do you not think you can change your earning potential? Because it's not about other people, like some sort of godly people saying, okay, you finally deserve more. And you just wait and hope that someone will tap you on the shoulder one day and say, here, you can earn more. It's actually something we have agency over. And that's really where the attitude shift needs to happen, is you are in control of how much you earn. And you'll understand that when you understand the value equation. What you earn is directly related to how much value you are providing. And people who think it's just based on the government and what they decide is minimum wage or whatever the industry decides, that's the mindset I want you to drop. You are in control. And yes, there are industries that pay more and whatnot because for whatever reason, society values those industries more. Like, unfortunately, right now, anything in AI or coding and engineering, those kind of tech jobs, data analytics, those pay a lot because that is what's transforming society right now, right? Mm-hmm. So if you know how to make things happen in those areas, you provide a lot of value. So part of it is understanding what's like being valued by society right now, by how the world is going. And then also, so like if you know how to build, I don't know, what's like something kind of an outdated technology. I don't know, if you know how to work with analog cameras, like we're in the digital age now. So that's not that's not that valuable anymore. So part of it is understanding what's valuable to the world and society at large. And then once you've, and that might require a career shift. Who knows? So making sure you're in the right industry that's valued by the society at large. And then within that industry that you are making yourself extremely valuable. Mm-hmm. And this could mean upskilling. It could mean, reading books and doing extra training on your own to become more valuable, because the more you know, the more value you can provide. Yep. And it also means getting intimately familiar with what your boss's priorities are and figuring out how you can help him or her reach that easier. That's someone who's valuable, It's not about, I need more money because inflation and the cost of living is higher. I really hope someone's going to pay me more. I just need someone to pay me more. It doesn't start there. I've had people on my team come to me and say, I really need to make more because I started helping my parents, blah, blah, blah. And it's good for me to know that. I want to know how you're doing in life, but that doesn't make it any easier for me to justify giving you a raise. I need to know, what value are you providing to me? What value can you provide to me and like justify the raise for me? So there really is a science and an art to negotiating more pay. And if you can directly communicate the value you provide and why you should be compensated for that value, your employer won't be able to say no. So it's really a question of doing that the right way and not hoping and praying that you can earn more.
I love that answer. As a former business owner, still do, but to a different degree, but I used to own a gym, and I can always remember, coaches would come to me and, hey, I want to make more money. And I'm like, okay, I would love to be able to pay you more money. Let's find ways where you can bring in more revenue for the business so that I can pay you more. But I can't just give you a raise without you adding to the top line of the business. And so I've never actually heard the phrase, the value equation, like you said there at the beginning, but like being in that position, I learned, as a business owner, employees cannot make more, myself included in that, if I'm not adding significant value, and not just value, but, can you make yourself irreplaceable? Can you be more than just, a cog in the wheel? And so I love that you answered it that way.
So quick story about earning your worth and how I learned this. Mm-hmm. When I quit my Wall Street job, I had a little period of fun employment, but eventually I got a new job with a real estate developer. And at my Wall Street job, I realized that I wasn't getting paid as some of my other colleagues, getting paid as much. But I didn't have the courage to say anything about it. And I also knew that I needed to make more if I was going to make any dent on this student loan debt in any meaningful amount of time. So at this new job, I knew that I would just have to do things differently. Like I would need to earn a lot more in order to reach my goal of getting to zero. So it's a really useful moment when you realize that in order to create new things in your life, you need to do things that you've never done before. And one of them is having the courage to ask for more and also to make myself worth earning more. And so at this new job, completely unprompted, I would stay late and study all the financial statements and just the back end of how the business worked. And I realized that my new boss, he needed a lot of help putting together really organized financial reports to show his real estate investors. Like that was an area of his business that was really stressing him out. And I also knew that he needed help getting more deals, like finding new properties to invest in. So not only did I stay late to figure out how to organize all of his accounting statements and create nice reports, but I also started cold calling people. And I actually got him a deal that he ended up investing in and ended up doing very well for us. And so throughout this process, I made myself indispensable. And I didn't have to ask for permission. I just did it. And then I became indispensable. And when I asked for a raise, believe me, I was scared. My hands were sweaty. I was like, what is he going to think of me? Is he going to think I'm greedy or just tell me to F off? But actually, what he came back to me with was shocking. He was like, absolutely. Like, I completely see your value. Like, let me see what I can do. He was like tripping over himself to figure something out, you know? So that was really validating for me. And I've taken that experience and lesson with me ever since.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really important lesson for everybody to learn and to internalize. So you mentioned saving more, especially in that from 10,000 in the bank to 100,000, and specifically tax efficient methods. If those are in the book, I don't want to go too far into them today, but do you get into specifics in the book as to, what to choose, how to set those up and things like that?
Yeah, totally. I even have sort of a decision tree if you're self-employed or if you're an employee, if you're a high earner, there's like a whole decision tree with a set of accounts that would be good for you. So are a lot of your listeners, would you say they're like self-employed or employed or a mix?
I'd say it's a good mix of both.
Mm-hmm. So standard, if you're like a high earning employee, you would want to have your 401k, which your employer will usually provide for you. You could look into a Roth IRA or a backdoor Roth IRA. And then if eligible, I would look into a health savings account, which is sort of an investment account that's on steroids, like a triple tax loophole, because everything you put into that account is tax deductible. Everything that grows, all the investment growth is also tax free. And then when you take money out, as long as it's for health related expenses, it's also tax free. So triple tax loophole, money in, money growing, money out. It's all completely tax free. And you can actually invest in this account just like you would with any other brokerage account. A lot of people don't know that. So I would say that's like the perfect package. 401k, Roth IRA, HSA if eligible, plus if you have extra money to put away into investments, a brokerage account for additional savings.
Nice. Okay. One of my favorite sayings from a really good friend of mine and a guy who's really, really savvy financially. Someone told him once that every dollar is an employee. And you said it as you were going through, especially in that 100K to 1 million threshold, make your money work for you. Are you open to sharing some of the ways that you did that personally, or do you have some, maybe go-tos that you recommend for other people?
Yeah, totally. The easiest way for people to start getting money working for them is investing in the stock market. We talk about real estate and there's many investments you can get into, but real estate, and I personally do have experience in rental property, but for the average person, going into rental property right away is a huge jump because you're putting all of your eggs in one basket and you need skill. You need either skilled people like a really good property manager and good contractors, and you also need enough skill to manage them well. So it just takes a lot of skill, and then you're very vulnerable to the economy of that neighborhood or that exact place, location where you bought. So I feel like for most people to get their money working for them, I want them to look at investing in the stock market rather than real estate, at least when you're beginning. Because with the stock market, you can invest with as little as $10, fractional shares. And you can also invest in a very diversified way. So my preferred investment of choice, both for myself, even nowadays, and for anyone beginning, is index funds, low cost index funds. You don't need to pick the next hot stock and see what the next Nvidia or the next Amazon or Apple is going to be, because that takes a lot of skill. And even people who look at this all day, every day, like Warren Buffett, even they find it hard, you know? Mm-hmm. But the average person can win just by investing in a little piece of the economy, in owning a little bit of all the companies that are out there. Because no matter what, the economy has always gone up. The economy has always survived. That's just how capitalism works. You know, like the weak ones get weeded out. Innovation and technology keeps advancing us. Productivity increases, population increases, and GDP increases, and the stock market tracks the upward trajectory of world GDP. So investing in the stock market via low cost index funds, that's the easiest way to get started. Then you can start earning dividends. I don't know if people know this, but low cost index funds, you know, like one easy one to look at is VTI. That's the US total stock market. You can start getting quarterly dividends right away. And once you get that experience of just getting dividends, like passive income that you never had to work for, just because your money is working for you, even if that first dividend payment is 30 cents. I remember my first dividend payment, it was like 10 cents, but it just hit different, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really one great way for people to start getting money working for them.
Okay. One of the other really powerful mindset shifts in that stage is breaking free of the time for money exchange. If someone's not familiar with that phrasing, you know, what does that mean, and what are some ways that people can start to move away from that?
So breaking free of trading time for money. Investing is the quickest way to do that. As soon as you have $1 working for you and then you get a dividend payment, you didn't put in any time to earn that dividend, right? So that's one way. But another way is in changing how you earn. So quick story, in 2021, in 2020, I made $160,000 in a week. And this is more than I ever earned in a year of salary at any of the jobs I've ever had. The most I ever made in a salary was maybe $130,000. And so my mind was completely blown. And the way I did this is I had been building my following on YouTube and providing value and creating content. And then I came out with an online course to teach people about money and investing. And through different marketing funnels and strategies, I sold this online course and brought in $160,000 in a week. And from there, just like something just clicked in my mind. Like you just build something that you can sell over and over later on, and build systems to sell passively, whether you're there like working and teaching people or not. But I recorded something that could be sold later on when I'm sleeping or just sitting on the toilet. So this is really how I got from 100,000 to $1 million in just 3 years. Like anyone can get to $1 million in 20 years. If you just do all the things I said and you invest in the stock market over time, you know, investing $500 a month for 30 years, you'll have $1 million and you've only put in 180,000. That's based on historical S&P 500 returns. So anyone can get to $1 million in a couple decades. But if you want to get there in a couple years, in your 30s, while you're still young, this is the way to do it. You need to think about earning in a leveraged way, in an exponential way. Because even if you have a high earning job, like as a neurosurgeon, you still have to show up and do the surgery and go to the hospital and do the work to get the 1,000 an hour or whatever their rate is. Yeah, what they earn per hour is high, but it's always linear. You work another hour, you make that much. You work another hour, you make that much. But with exponential income, this leveraged way of earning, in the beginning, you probably earn nothing. So it's like, I have a chart in the book, but linear, as soon as you show up to work, you start getting paid. So you get that immediate payoff, but it's linear. With exponential, in the beginning, it's probably flat. So I'm not saying everyone needs to do this, but I built my YouTube channel for a year before I made a dime. looking back, I did many things stupidly and could have done it smarter, but I was like building an asset of an audience of people who trusted me without getting paid anything. So my income was zero. But then when I started monetizing it with online courses and sponsorships and all the different ways you can monetize a YouTube channel, my income just skyrocketed. Like it just completely surpassed all of my colleagues that I went to school with who were getting MBAs and getting promoted to VP in Wall Street and all these things. Like I just completely surpassed them. And now like they're like way back there. So that's the power of exponential income. And something that I think the biggest mindset shift that you have to make to go from linear to exponential income is this idea of instant gratification. Like a paycheck is instant gratification and it's guaranteed too. If you just show up, you will get paid 2 weeks like clockwork. With exponential income, you have to build something that will create a ton of income for you later. But because you're building something that never existed before, a system, an asset, there is a level of uncertainty involved where this may or may not work. There's many things you can do to stack the odds in your favor and be strategic, but there's no guarantee, right? That's entrepreneurship. And also, it could be a while until it pays off. So that's like the instant gratification. You might need to keep your day job while you build this thing. And that's what I did for a while.
Right. And I love that you highlight there's no guarantee that it pays off. But the other side of that, and this is a conversation I just had yesterday with someone, there's 100% guarantee that if you don't attempt it, it will not work out.
Yes. Yeah.
So while we can't guarantee that it will, make you 160 grand in a week, or, that you'll have a channel that you can monetize within a year. If you don't do it, you'll have zero, and that will stay that way. That won't even be linear. It'll just be a flat line.
Definitely. Yeah. So it's about realizing the pain of staying where you are versus the pain of what it takes to grow. When the pain of staying where you are becomes greater than the pain it takes to grow is when you actually do the things.
Yeah. So since you said that, that kind of brings me back to something I wanted to ask you in the beginning. You're talking about that moment when you're 25 and you're looking at, before you even did your chart with your assets and your liabilities, you said, hey, I realized my life was not what I wanted it to be, and I wasn't where I wanted to be. I think there's a lot of people that might say that about their life, but aren't yet uncomfortable enough to make that change. Why do you think you, in that moment, reacted and acted the way that you did to make the change?
There was a story that I left out because this was like a realization that was kind of building up over several months. And there was one moment where I was flying back from Burning Man, actually. Burning Man was a life-changing experience for me. It like opened up my eyes to so many things and sort of brought up a lot of thoughts that I had been repressing. And so coming back from Burning Man, I was processing and I was journaling. And like this memory surfaced that I had forgotten about. And it was a memory of me sitting at the kitchen table with my dad. I had come home from college for summer break or whatever. And I was crying to him about all the student loans that I was having to take on to get this degree and how it was stressing me out. And my dad, because he also came from the same money story of just the same limited money story, he didn't have any other answer to console me other than, I'm sorry, but I'll just help you co-sign your student loans, and hopefully it'll all work out. That's all he had to say to me. And that's when I realized that, that's why I'm in so much debt. That's why my parents are in so much debt. That's why we are where we are. Like they're just passing on what they know about money to me. And that's all I have to work with. And so if I want to change my finances, the only way forward is to it has to be me. And otherwise I'm going to just perpetuate this cycle of lack and scarcity and debt. And later on, when my parents are older, I won't be able to help them because I'll also be in debt. We'll just all be drowning in scarcity together.
Mhm.
And and that was really the powerful emotional moment that made me decide that no matter what, I have to move forward. I have to change things, because the thought of not being able to be there for my parents, that was just unbearable to me. So I think when you
Yeah.
can really make it about something bigger than just yourself, because yes, I wanted a good life. I wanted more than just living paycheck to paycheck and have money to travel. But the moment I really made it realize the connection of how, if I change, how that will affect everyone around me that I love, that's what gave me like motivation, like jet fuel in my veins. So that's a key step that I actually glossed over in the Add a Zero process in the Master Your Money Mindset section. I walk people through an exercise of discovering your intrinsic why, your
Mhm.
deeply personal reason for wanting to go on this journey.
Yeah.
And once you really, really get in touch with that, and you never lose sight of it, you're going to want to keep going. You might fall off the wagon. Sure. You might, have your moments of disempowerment, but this is what you need to get in touch with to keep going.
Yep. I love that, and I mean that reminds me of something that we used to call 5, 6, 7. Back when I had the gym and was a part of the mastermind, and it was all about peeling the layers of the onion and getting beyond those surface level motivations. And so I'll just give you an example from the fitness space where somebody may come in and say, hey, I want to lose 10 pounds. Okay, great. What's so great about that? Well, maybe I'll have more energy. Okay. Well, how would your life be different if you have more energy? Um, maybe I'd have more energy and I'd actually be able to play with my kids or my grandkids at the end of the day. And so you basically ask the what's so great about that, or how is your life different than question 5, 6, 7 times, and you start to get to what you're calling that intrinsic motivating factor. And so, I always use the example of like, if you're in the gym and I'm teaching the class and you're dragging ass one day, I'm like, okay, Rose, I thought you wanted to lose 10 pounds. What kind of a response am I going to get from you versus same scenario? And I say, hey, Rose, I thought you wanted more energy to play with your grandkids or your kids. And what kind of example are you setting for your kids? I'm getting a completely different response from that person. And so as a coach, learning to get that, but also, as an individual, learning to find that for yourself so that you can motivate yourself. And to me, I think that's a real key to consistency. And that's going to lead us to, we're kind of coming up on the end of the hour. I want to be respectful of your time, Rose. So two things here. One, where can people get more of you and the book?
Yeah, so my book is everywhere books are sold. Amazon, probably the easiest place. Add a Zero, a step-by-step guide to financial freedom and getting to your first million. And if you go to addazero.com and you enter in your receipt number and your email address, you'll get a couple of extra bonuses that come with the book completely free. And I'm best on YouTube, but you can find me at It's Rose Han on all social handles.
All right. We'll put links to all of that in the show notes, make it easy on everybody. And then the final question, your number one tip for our listeners to develop more consistency, whether that's in, moving the chains or adding a zero, whatever comes to your mind in terms of being consistent on a daily basis with the behaviors that we want to change.
My number one tip is to find the pleasure and joy in it. Like, I'm not into just motivating yourself out of sheer discipline. Like, discipline sounds exhausting. It's not fun. Gotta find a way to make it fun and enjoyable. Like, I'm doing this with the gym. Like, I've actually started enjoying feeling strong and sweating and doing the gym thing. And with money, I've really reprogrammed when I sit down to budget and do my money stuff. I've really reprogrammed it to feel like self-care. Like, I'm taking care of my money so my money can take care of me. And just as enjoyable as it is to go get a massage and facials and do other self-care, that's how enjoyable it is to me. I've found that connection, and that's why I keep showing up for it week after week, day after day. So to really find what that is for you, and let joy and pleasure and self-love really lead the way.
I love it. Rose, this has been a blast. Thanks for hanging out with us on the Move the Change podcast. Everybody listening, thank you for being here. I'm glad you're a part of this and excited for the conversations and guests to bring you in the future. As you know, every week we're going to bring you tips and tools on how to use Move the Chains in your day-to-day life with real-world examples from my life, from coaching clients, friends, other high-performing, successful folks like Rose, so you can see how they have their versions of Move the Chains to fuel their successes. As always, thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so you get notified of new episodes. And if you dig what you're hearing, please leave us a review or share it with somebody that you know who will benefit from what we're talking about here today.